Well, hello, this is Jimmy the Hammer. What follows is an interview that I had with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and it was very gracious of him to take the time to talk to me for over an hour. I had a great time, really enjoyed it. Fair disclosure, this is the very first time of me using Zoom to do a recording, and my audio is terrible. I sincerely apologize. His is better, mine is terrible. He's the one you really want to listen to anyway. Lots of great information. And as always, I want to thank our sponsor, my dog, Titus. So that's it. And here we go with the video.
Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy the Hammer, and with me now I have Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and I really am honored to have you on my show. What such that it is for all 47 people that are watching. But thank you so much. It's been a little bit of work getting this together. Anyway, so I wanted to talk to Dr. Chaffee because he's one of the I don't know what I would one of the foremost experts that I would say on the carnivore diet in the YouTube world. And I know the few people that follow me, they will all have questions. So first of all, what's your background? Now you are I know you're, no, don't, neurosurgeon, and you're practicing in Perth, Australia right now, right?
Yeah, so I'm a medical doctor from America, currently in Australia. I've lived in US and Europe and done humanitarian work in Bangladesh and been all over the place. Now I've ended up in Australia. I'm a neurosurgical resident, so I'm still working on that side of things, but I also have just had a deep interest in diet and nutrition and how that affects health and chronic disease and athletic performance for you know, forever, really, for athletic performance reasons for my whole life and for medical reasons for about 25 years now. And I've just seen that become a huge part of my practice and how I can better help people and treat the underlying cause of disease and not practice sick care where people just fall off the cliff in their health and you're just picking up the pieces. This is something that can address the underlying condition. You're not just treating symptoms and disasters. You can actually get people better and well, maybe even prevent them from being sick in the first place. And so I have a practice outside of neurosurgery in what's called functional medicine, but is so better thought of as preventative medicine. So this is addressing root underlying cause, getting people healthy so they don't have these medical issues in the first place.
And I have watched a bunch of your stuff, so I know some of the stuff, which is great. But now this sounds very laudable and excellent, but this hasn't necessarily always been really smooth sailing. You've had some like serious pushback when you've just said, "Hey, this hasn't been working for you. So here's a couple of studies. Why don't you check out just eating meat?" And you've had some like serious things happen that are sad. I mean, they're just like, really?
Which ones? Which ones are you referring? I mean,
The one,
there's a lot of people online that say a lot of things, but you
no,
can't.
I'm talking about the one where you told a patient, why don't you check this out? And people
Mhm.
were listening and went and complained to your boss.
Oh, right, yeah. So that was the time when I was doing a rotation in the hospital, and I was actually on general surgery rotation, so not on neurosurgery. And I got asked to see a consult with a lady from the gastroenterology department, and she had Crohn's disease, and it was very bad. And as Crohn's disease is. And so we got to talking, and I told her that I was from the surgical department, and asked to consult and see if surgery was a good option for her, and discuss that with her. And she almost immediately says, "I don't want to do surgery. Is there anything I can do besides surgery? I really don't want to have surgery." So, being a responsible clinician, I'm not going to just stuff it down her throat going like, "No, this is the only thing." And I said, "Okay, well, look, what other sorts of treatments are you having?" Went through that. She was on all the medications and all these sorts of things, and it wasn't working. She's still having flare-ups. And I said, "Well, listen, this isn't medical. I'm not telling you what to do. However, there is information and there are studies that actually show that dietary interventions can help in these situations. Specifically, there were a couple of studies. One with what's called an elemental diet being just the elements of your diet, right? So just the nutrients. And it's highly processed. It's sort of like a powdered drink form. And they do this for epilepsy patients as well. And that's without carbohydrates. So it's just the essential nutrients and nothing else, not even carbs. So just proteins, fats, and all the micronutrients that you need. And carbohydrates are not an essential macronutrient. And so in those studies with Crohn's disease specifically, they found this was an interventional trial. So you can actually, get causation. It's not just association. They found that when putting someone on an elemental diet, that this was a better treatment for an acute flare-up of Crohn's than prednisone, right? So that the steroids is really strong steroids that just smash your immune system down and will get you out of an acute flare-up. So just not eating certain things was better than steroids, the gold standard in medical treatment. And these steroids have a lot of side effects. A lot of medications the prednisone is pretty cheap, but it's a lot of side effects. The newer medications that they have for Crohn's are very expensive and have a lot of side effects as well. So I just pointed that out. There's another study, again, an interventional trial with people with Crohn's that they put them on, they just basically excluded carbohydrates and fiber. Not much less left besides fatty meat when you take out carbs and fiber, right? Because even lettuce has fiber, right? It may not have carbs, but it has fiber. So they took out carbs and fiber, and that gets rid of processed food as well, doesn't it? Because that's going to be carbs. It's generally carbs in processed plant foods, because processed food really is processed plant foods is what we're talking about here. And so that was found to keep people, and I want to see if this intervention could keep people in remission without medication and how long they could do that for. And so they found that they could keep people in remission up to 51 months. So that's over 4 years just by eliminating carbohydrates and fiber, right? Contrast that with the group that did not remove carbohydrates and fiber, and they stayed in remission on average 0 months, right? So not a lot of months, especially compared to the 4+ years. So just removing the carbohydrates and fiber was enough to keep them in remission for over 4 years. So what does that mean? That means there's something in the carbohydrates or the fiber or something that comes along with the carbohydrates and fiber that cause Crohn's disease, right? And that's what we need to think about, what's underlying causing this. Because you just remove something and the problem goes away. Well, there's a good chance that that's the cause of that problem, right? And so I pointed that out. I pointed out other things, such as that we've been treating Crohn's disease since the 1800s with a pure red meat and water diet from Dr. J.H. Salisbury. It's what the Salisbury steak was named after. And the Salisbury steak was specifically made to grind meat down in such a way that you could filter out the gristle so that you absorb 100% of that meat. And so you completely rested the bowel. So if you're very sick with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, and you're in a lot of pain and you're really unwell, you really need to just completely rest that and just let that heal. And so if you did that and you sort of filtered out the gristle, the connective sort of tough fibrous tissue, that allowed your body to absorb essentially 100% of this and rest your bowel completely. You're getting perfect nutrition, and your bowel and your colon's not getting damaged, and the rest of your bowel's pretty relaxed as well. So and the list goes on. I mean, there's a book written by a gastroenterologist in 1975, Dr. I think it's Walter Vogelin, who wrote a book called The Stone Age Diet, where he basically argued that, hey, look, if you don't eat plants, that humans are carnivores, that's what we've always eaten. Here's the evidence. And if you don't eat plants, my profession doesn't need to exist. That's sort of the gist I got from it. And so this is all over the literature, and there's more as well. I found several studies on this in the current literature and in the recent literature. So you don't have to go back to 1975, let alone 1875. Right now, in the current literature, we're seeing these studies. And so I just pointed that out, and I just said, hey, listen, you get to do whatever you want to do. Here's some more information. Here's the names of some studies. Here are some links. take a look at those, see what you think. Surgery is always on the table. That's always available. We're not going to run out of scalpels anytime soon. So, whatever you want to do. So, some little weasel on the gastroenterology team at the hospital sort of was just eavesdropping. Decided not to talk to me about it, not to come up to me and say, hey, what was all that about? I hadn't heard that before. Just went told teacher and told his boss. And instead of, again, talking to me and going like, why are you talking about this? Where's this coming from? Just went straight to my head of department and said, what's this guy doing? We're going to inform the medical board and try to get this guy's license dinged. It's like, and the people on my department, knew me and knew that I actually knew what I was talking about. And they were like, whoa, hold on a second. Like, why do we have to go there? Why don't we just talk to him and just see what's going on and see if there's maybe a reason that he said these sorts of things. And, if you don't like people talking about that sort of thing, you don't want that recommendation, we can just say, hey, please don't bring that up to our patients.
Yep.
And so that's what they did to me. They called me and they were like, well, there's no evidence to show that this works. I'm like, well, actually there is. And I sent them all these studies and they're like, well, actually that's a lot of evidence. So they were just saying like, look, this is something that people don't really know about and they're going to balk at it. So just, try not to give those recommendations and things like that. It's like, that's fine. It's your business. But it's just sort of funny when, especially in a professional setting, when people don't actually come to you and say, what's going on. That before. When I saw new research and I talked to patients about that new research and someone else came in, but said, hey, look, I didn't want to say something when you're talking to a patient, but like that's not true. That's not a thing. And I'm like, the evidence is pretty convincing. There's this evidence and this evidence and this publication by these research and these, groups. And that person, that was a fruitful conversation because he even said like, oh, well, you know what, look, I'm always willing to learn something too. Maybe there's something new that I don't know about. Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that. And so that's what you're supposed to do in a professional setting, especially medicine. These sorts of things are not set in stone. We change the opinions and views and guidelines, recommendations all the time. And new information becomes available, opinions change, and that changes people's recommendations and certain things come into vogue and out of vogue, depending on what's going on. So you always have to keep it in mind.
And unless you're the government, and then you don't change your recommendations for decades.
Definitely not. Yeah.
And so this conversation is going to be, if anybody knows me, I am a little like, I can be a little like all over the place. But so you have been doing carnivore for how many years now?
So right now I've been doing it straight for 6 years. But I started it originally 23 years ago when I was 20 years old. So I'm 43 now. And
so,
when
I mean, I have to say that you look remarkably good for a dead guy, because obviously you have to have died by now.
Well, it's been a struggle with all my obesity and rampant heart disease and gout and diabetes, but I'm muddling along, And
the article that I mean, I don't know. I kind of shared it with you, and I don't know if you saw it, but they posted in the Boston Herald for the 4 people that read newspapers anymore about how a study just came out that if you eat more red meat, it leads to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, and yet we put people on pure red meat and water diet, and their diabetes goes away, and they come off insulin, come off all their medications, and their HbA1c comes down, their insulin comes down, and all of their biomarkers improve, their weight improves, their health improves, everything improves. And so it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment or reality, it's wrong.
Right.
And so if it's against the observable facts, it's wrong. And so these studies are fraught with problems. They're epidemiological studies.
They're epidemiological studies. They're asking them questions every 2 to 4 years. So what did you eat the past 2 years? And I was like, in my video, I'm like, I can't even remember what I ate last week.
And then it's easier for me because it's always just meat.
Right.
But
so
if someone asks me what I've been eating for the last 2 years, fairly easy. It's just meat.
Yeah.
But no diabetes. My insulin's nice and low, and so
Yeah.
is my blood sugar and HbA1c. So it's against the observable facts,
Hmm.
and it's wrong. I mean, epidemiology is just bad in general, but this was particularly bad. And a lot of these are, they're called confounding factors. They're things that get in the way of the truth.
Yep.
And one of the confounding factors was they considered eating meat or eating red meat if you said you ate lasagna or sandwiches.
Or pepperoni pizza or
Yeah. Yeah,
but
or hamburgers and things like that at McDonald's. So the thing is that things that contain meat or red meat, they just lump in with meat, even though there's many other ingredients in there. So these
Mhm.
aren't people eating just whole steaks and brisket and things like that without the sauce. These are people that are eating a mixed diet with a whole bunch of other things in it, and they're blaming the meat for that, which is frankly absurd.
It's like how many people go and get a hamburger and don't get French fries?
Yeah.
And a
Or
third
but
and a
also the
third
hamburger
people.
has a bun,
Yeah.
and it's got, maybe cooked in seed oils,
Yep.
and it's got mayonnaise that's made out of seed oils, and it's got ketchup with a bunch of sugar in it and a whole bunch of other ingredients. This is something that I saw the other day, or maybe the other week or month, but someone put up like the differences in the ingredients between ketchup in America and ketchup basically anywhere else in the world. This was in Canada. In America, there's like 30 some ingredients, however many, a lot. And in the Canadian version, it was 5. It was like tomatoes, sugar, vinegar, a couple other things, but they were like actual ingredients, that you'd find in a pantry as opposed to, a chemistry experiment.
Hmm.
And the American version was just the chemistry experiment. And so, when you're eating that sort of stuff, I mean, what do we think that's going to do to us? We have a biological design. We have chemicals that were adapted and designed to intake and digest and process. And then we have a lot of these chemicals that have never been in our food system before. Forget, whether we're carnivores, herbivores, omnivores, or whatever. These are chemicals that are being added that have just simply never existed in our food systems before, just ever. They're new. Seed oils are new. These are less than 100 years old. Canola oil is, I think, they invented that in the 50s or something. They were using cottonseed oil in the late 1800s. That was the earliest. There wasn't anything else before that, and certainly nothing that they were using in food. And now we're adding all these things that are very new in our biological history, and we're deciding somehow that this is okay and this is good for us and this is better than eating our natural diet of the past several million years. I don't think that is cogent at all. It doesn't make any sense if you have studied and understood biology to any degree.
I was just watching an episode of the Mind Pump show. It does make sense when you consider that you cannot patent a hamburger patty, but you can
Yeah.
patent Impossible Burger.
Yep, that's true too.
Herein,
Yeah.
herein lies the thing. Why are they pushing veggies, veggies, veggies? Is because they can make the products and patent them.
And there's a huge profit margin as well.
Yeah.
It's a much larger profit margin on processed foods than whole foods, even whole fruits and vegetables. Much more money in the processed garbage. It makes a lot more money for a lot more people. The producers of beef, for instance, make next to nothing. They're, oh, big beef. What big beef are you talking about?
It's like
This is a
5 or 10%, maybe, right?
well, it's a conglomeration. I mean, the people that produce cattle are a conglomeration of independent farmers and ranchers. There's some larger farms, most of them are smaller farms, and it all sort of goes up into a system. There are big meat packing companies, like Tyson, things like that. And what are the other one out of Brazil is a monster. Now those suckers are pretty tyrannical, just like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and all the others. But that's not the meat producers. There was I was speaking to a rancher about this up in Canada, and she was saying that there was economic survey and study of this, and they looked at all the hours that ranchers would work on average and how much they got paid for their work, and they calculated that on average ranchers get paid about 43 cents an hour.
Ugh,
right?
yeah.
For all of their work. And a lot of them make less than that because my friend Maggie, who has a ranch, has been carnivore, only eating meat literally her whole life. She's 82 now, and she's running and skipping around like she's 30. Literally, I saw her hop over very rapidly over a 5 foot tall fence to jump into a corral and rain down an actual raging bull. This thing was a monster. Like I wasn't getting in there, and she just got in there with just no hesitation, like grab it, come on, let's go, and just got. Now she birthed him and has known him
Right.
forever. So, she has that relationship with him.
Right.
But it was so impressive to see her do that so quickly at 82 years old. It was as quicker than I could do it, literally. you know, and I've seen her climb up, big tall stacks of hay and climb up and down farm equipment, climb up a mast to grab the rope and bring it down quick as you like. I mean, just absolutely crazy, just eating meat her whole life. So,
Mhm.
diabetes, she's not on any medications, anything like that. And
Obviously, we
she,
know that's not possible. She has to be a hologram.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, she works a crazy amount. She's up at 5 a.m. every day out with the cows, 5 a.m. every day. And they lose money because they're being driven out. They're making everything, the land more expensive, the taxes more expensive, the costs more expensive, hay is more expensive. Everything's getting more and more and more and more expensive, and they're just driving everyone out. And so they have to sell off more land and more land and more land. And so the ranchers are dwindling. She was telling me that a year or two ago, Canada lost fully 1/3 of their cattle ranchers. So that's a big loss very quickly. 1/3 of the entire herd population in Canada is gone now in the span of 1 year. So that's pretty bad. And she's losing money. These other ranchers are losing money. Some are doing well, but on average 40, 42, 43 cents an hour. And she'd be on the other side of that. So she is losing money. So she's paying out of her retirement savings and retirement funds to operate her ranch. So she's paying for the privilege of working 14 hours starting at 5 a.m. Pretty crazy. So people
Yeah.
say, oh, well, big beef isn't what big beef. There's no big beef. It's big packing plants,
Right.
but people that produce beef are a little guy, and they're getting screwed.
Meanwhile, as Dr. John Jaquish says, it's like the profit margin on a Triscuit's like 600%.
Yeah,
Something ridiculous.
massive. Yeah,
One of the things that does come up a lot, and I know you've heard it, and I know you've dealt with this before, but that you need to eat fiber because fiber feeds your gut microbiome. Now, you don't eat any, and you seem pretty healthy to me.
yeah.
So, how would you address that argument? Is you need to have fiber for your gut microbiome?
Well, I mean, and what's the evidence for this? Where are they bringing this from? Generally, it's because they say, well, you need butyrate for your enterocytes. Well, there's other sources of butyrate that can feed your enterocytes. First of all, if you're in a state of ketosis and you're making ketones, one of the main ketone bodies is this nature, and that feeds your enterocytes parenterally through your circulation. And there are other things in your food that can break down and turn into that as well. It doesn't have to be from fiber. So that's out. And you don't even need to go that far. You don't need to get down into the nitty gritty. Sometimes we lose track of the forest for the trees and we're looking, oh, but this little thing, you need this chemical. And oh my God. Okay, well, why do the Inuit exist then? What fiber is available at the North Pole? And so if you need fiber, well, then they don't exist, right? If you need fiber for an optimal microbiome, so you can be optimally healthy, okay, but you can still live with a suboptimal one, fine, okay. But if it's required essential, you have to have it. It's an essential nutrient, which fiber is now classified as an essential nutrient, meaning you will die without it. That doesn't explain why the Inuit exists. That doesn't explain how we got through all the ice ages. But if you're looking at optimal microbiomes, why is it that the Inuit in several studies when eating their natural diet, because there are other studies that look at the Inuit when they're not eating their natural diet, or it's a mix of the two. And then they're like, well, they're having the same disease as everyone else. So obviously that Inuit diet is stupid. Like, well, no, you're stupid because you're looking at a study that doesn't measure the Inuit diet. You're looking at the Inuit population who are eating mixed, or you're intentionally being dishonest and you're trying to mislead people by doing that. And that happens a lot. I see that a lot. So the Inuit have some of the healthiest microbiomes that have ever been studied when eating just a carnivore diet, just meat and water only. And
Now,
not
could it be, and I just thought of this, so tell me that I'm totally whacked, but could it be possibly that yes, you do need fiber if you're eating carbohydrates because it blunts the blood sugar effect. So yeah, if you're eating carbohydrates, then yeah, you need fiber. But if you're just eating meat, is that a possibility?
Well, it depends. It depends on your end goal. If you
Right.
want to reduce the absorption of carbohydrates, then yes, that is useful. I still don't think you need them. I don't think you have to have carbohydrates.
I'm not.
So the thing is though, is you're actually onto something, because there are studies that look at the quote unquote benefits of fiber, and there are many that they quote, but this is in comparison to people eating garbage, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it can be healthy user bias, or they have ones that they give you a fiber supplement tablet and they say, wow, this improves things. Now, some of these are not improving much at all. So some of these things, there are some meta-analyses that go around saying, wow, we found that this really helps with blood pressure or other sorts of things. And this is coming from a conversation I had with different people at various times, where they said, well, what about these meta-analyses? This shows that fiber is really, really good for you. It's like, okay, well, this is saying that there's a trend that fibers can benefit blood pressure and different sorts of things like that. Okay, that's fine. You look at the individual studies that they use in these meta-analyses, which I did. I didn't go through all of them. It was like 30. I just randomly selected a handful and just took a look. Everyone I saw, it was very marginal at best improvement. So there was like blood pressure on average blood pressure was whatever it was. And then people in the fiber group had a drop on average of 1.5 points, right? So this is going from, to make up some numbers, 155 down to 153.5. So not a dramatic drop in the blood pressure. It's not like this cured hypertension or anything like that. It was not significant, really, and it was not a significant amount. May have been statistically significant, but it wasn't a significant amount that you would go right home and say like, oh my God, this is, if you had a medication that did only that, like sorry, you're not going to be able to sell that. It's not going to do much for you. But so there's things like that. And so there's a lot of these things that say, well, there's this benefit, but how big is the benefit? How good is the benefit? Sometimes it's very marginal at best. And then, yes, there are studies that say, well, eating fiber can help stabilize your blood sugar. So this is really good for diabetics, but it's exactly from that, because how does fiber work? It doesn't get absorbed into your body. It's not doing anything. It has to work in the gut.
Yep.
And so when you have a combination of soluble and insoluble fiber, as you would find in a plant that you eat, that it sort of forms this lattice work and a sort of basically a barrier, like a physical barrier, between the digestive enzymes that your body produces. And so that doesn't necessarily get to the food. So it can't break it down properly, but also it forms a barrier between the broken down digested food and the lumen of your intestines. So it can't get to the border cells to then be taken up and absorbed. So there's different estimates. I've heard from, say, Dr. Robert Lustig from UCSF, who wrote several books on these different subjects. One called Metabolical, where the percentage he quoted was 30%. It reduced the absorption by 30%. But that's going to reduce the absorption of everything by 30%. So if you're eating a whole bunch of high octane garbage and it reduces by 30%, I'd say that's a benefit.
Right.
I don't think it's essential in the sense that you'll die without it. But it's a benefit from that point of view. And it's certainly it can reduce your absorption of carbohydrates up to 30%, say. And yeah, that's going to stabilize your blood sugar. However, there are other studies showing that there's one that I believe it was Zoe Harcum who did a talk, and she mentioned a study that had over 2,000 people, and they followed these people for however long, and they found they had a fiber group and a non-fiber group, a high fiber group and a lower fiber group, and they found that in the higher fiber group, they had a significantly higher risk of cardiac death, cardiovascular death. So they were like dying more often of heart attacks and strokes.
The high
So
fiber.
go here.
Okay.
Do
Excellent.
we want to slightly reduce the amount of garbage that we're eating, or just not eat garbage in the first place? Or do we want to not die of a heart attack or a stroke? I mean, I think we'll go for the latter. So fiber is, I think, problematic, to say the least, in saying that it's a benefit, because what is it benefiting? You have to think about how it's being used and what is your end goal. The benefits are pretty tenuous, and compared to people eating a low fiber diet, which is what? It's either a carnivore diet or a highly processed food diet. Well, how many people are really doing a carnivore diet? Is that what we're comparing this to?
Right.
Is the average American eating a carnivore diet, and that's why they're eating a low fiber diet, or they're eating a highly processed food diet, and that's why they're eating a low fiber diet? And you go to a whole food diet and you start worrying about your health more, and you have a healthy user bias, and you start working out. Is your health going to improve? So, comparing this to, or the interventions where you give someone a fiber supplement and it improves your blood pressure by 1.5 points. Okay. Yes, there's an improvement, but compared to what?
Compared to what? Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, any economist will always say, compared to what? Compared to what? Well, compared to people that are sick and eating garbage. Okay. So adding some fiber in, sick and eating garbage is a little better. Fine. I'm happy with that. That doesn't mean that you have to have it. It doesn't mean that it's a benefit when you're not eating garbage, when you're eating good things that are good for you, and you don't want to cut out 30% of what you're eating. You want to absorb every ounce of the steak that you ate.
Of course, if one wants to be pessimistic, one could say that perhaps the reason that you got to eat a high fiber diet is, this is going to be really pessimistic, is because that's being pushed by a group of people that want you to keep eating their junk. By eating a high fiber diet, you will be able to do it longer before you die. If that makes sense.
Maybe. I don't even know if they care that much.
Because
the thing is that they're profiting off the medications as well, and so they're invested both ways. Companies and the pharmaceutical companies, they are not unaware of fits that they have to each other's industries.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that I've been learning from yourself and Dr. Lustig, and how evil these companies can be. It's like Coke. I love Diet Coke, but I don't want to give them my money. It's okay. Diet Coke is less bad than Coke. Oh, fine, but I just don't want to give Coca-Cola. It really irks me now to give them my money. Anyway, okay. So
I would be careful with Diet Coke too, because I don't really know if it's less bad. I mean, at least you'll be in a ketogenic. You can maintain a ketogenic diet and maintain the metabolic system that I think that we're designed to be in, but all the chemicals they put in Diet Coke and regular Coke, but Diet Coke is these are again things that we have no business putting in our body.
Right. What Robert Lustig said is like, Diet Coke is half as bad. That doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah.
The problem with that is then what people say, well, there's 0 calories. So there's 0 calories, so I can have 6 as opposed to the one Coke. Right.
Yeah, well, there's that too, but and it's addictive, right?
Yep.
And also, it's is it half as bad? I mean, I don't think we know exactly how bad these things are. I do know that they didn't exist all that long ago, that we had these chemicals. So why are we putting them in our body? They certainly didn't exist 50,000 years ago in the last ice age. So I don't think you should put anything in your body that didn't exist, that our ancestors weren't eating in the last ice age, because that's how they got through the ice age, is eating optimally. But I saw a study in mice with just stevia, and this is like, oh, stevia, it's so good, and it's no carbs, oh, it's perfect. Okay. This has been in the market for not that long. We don't really have all this much data on it, but this was an animal study, so in mice, preclinical study, and it gave them the equivalent of 1 can of diet soda of stevia, right? So the equivalent of 1 can for us, they gave them a smaller version of that for them. And they normally would have the control group had a 100% fertility rate. And the group where they give them 1 can of stevia equivalent dropped down to 45%, right? So they had a 55% reduction in their fertility. So I don't think for a second that this stuff is benign. It's just, oh, it's free, it's no calories, it's fine. Oh, it's a bit of a chemical. Oh, what is it? No, no, no. This is doing things in your body. We are not combustion engines. We do not just burn things and release energy. That's not how it works. We are chemical factories. And you put chemicals in your body, they're going to react with other chemicals in your body. You can bet your life. And in some cases, you are betting your life. So I would not put any of that stuff in my body unless I had to survive. And you don't need any Diet Coke to survive.
No, don't misunderstand. Understand that, I'm coming from, I don't know if you know my history, but I've lost 100 pounds a couple of times. I'm
nice.
Seriously addicted to sugar. I know I'm addicted to sugar. I was addicted to Diet Coke, addicted to all these things. So I have a lot of addictive behaviors. So it's like, is it as bad as, would I rather have stevia? Would I rather have stevia than a Diet Coke? It's like, is it good? Is it optimal? No, I'm not going to say that. It's like, if you can avoid all those things, and that's one of the things. I was going to do something else, but I'll talk about this. So you came to this conclusion, as I recall, you were in cancer biology class. Was that like first year medical student? And your teacher told you?
No, that was an undergrad. Yeah, they don't teach cancer biology in medical school. They talk about it, but it's not like an in-depth full term course or anything.
But your teacher told you something that you were like, what?
Yeah, so that's how I got started eating only meat 23 years ago, is when I was in my cancer biology class in my doing my undergraduate degree. I was studying at the University of Washington in Seattle at the time, taking cancer biology just because it was interesting to me. That was something my mom said early on when I was starting college was, just look at the syllabus and just pick cool classes. Just look at things that sound interesting and just take them and see what happens. And I always wanted to be a doctor, and so I had to take all those classes and get those prerequisites, and that was fine. And then my other electives, it was just like, okay, well, look at this, ancient Greek history, the history of coinage and the Athenian markets. Okay, take that class, and ancient Greek, literature and anthropology, and then a class on cancer biology. Cool. I'm interested in cancer biology. I'm obviously going to come in contact with that as a doctor, and that's what I plan to be. So I was taking this class. It was very interesting. But what was most interesting is retrospectively looking back at one of the first things we went over was the fact that plants are living organisms. They like to stay living organisms, so they have defenses just like every other living organism. And while animals can run away or fight back, plants can't. And so they use a lot of different means, but the most common mean is using chemical defenses. And so they are directly poisonous or cause direct harm or damage or some other disruption in our metabolism and body in some sort of way, hormones, all sorts of different things, digestive disruptors, blocking nutrients from being absorbed, and so on. And we found out that a lot of these were carcinogenic as well, right? What is carcinogen? It's something that can disrupt your metabolism, body, and the inner workings of your cell and precipitate cancer down the road. But it's causing inflammation and damage and derangement to your body and your molecular biology and macrobiology as a result of that. So whether or not it ever causes cancer, it's still causing harm. The problem with cigarettes is not that they just cause cancer and you're just rolling on the dice on getting cancer. Yes, that's part of it, but it's causing damage to your entire system, and you will get very sick and unwell whether or not you get cancer. And so that's the thing. So this is a carcinogen, so that's a risk of cancer, but it's a risk of cancer because it's doing a lot of other damage that can also lead to cancer. And so we were looking at we were looking at things from a cancer perspective. So obviously we were looking at carcinogens, and we were talking about the carcinogens in the plants that we eat on a daily basis. or commonly anyway. And we were told at that point, 23 years ago, that just Brussels sprouts had 136 known human carcinogens in them, and that mushrooms had over 100, and spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, all the different produce, fruits, and vegetables that you, and including fruits, contained dozens and dozens and dozens of carcinogens. And we knew that they were quite abundant. There's work out of UC Berkeley from a professor, Bruce Ames, that showed that there were 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in plants that they use as natural pesticides and insecticides, so they can stop the pests and the insects and the animals from eating them. Before we ever sprayed any crops, plants were already doing this, right? They were internally defending themselves. Ames identified 42 different toxic elements in these plants, and 20 of which were shown to be carcinogenic in lab studies with animals. And he found that those 42 toxins outweighed the pesticides being sprayed on them by a factor of 10,000, right? He didn't know about all the toxins. He only knew about 42 of them, and only 20 of which were carcinogens. 11 years later, when I was taking cancer biology, now we know about 136 just in Brussels sprouts, right? So the actual amount of toxins is probably far more than 10,000 times more than the pesticides we spray on them. And they were looking at like mushrooms, for instance, and alar, which was the pesticide of the day that they were trying to ban. And he was saying, hey, look, we're looking at vegetables and things like that and fruit that we're spraying this stuff on. And we're saying, no, we can't spray this on because it's so toxic, but the plant makes its own toxins. And we're calling those safe. And there's 10,000 times more of the natural ones. And the mushrooms are 500 times more likely to cause cancer in lab tests than the alar. So how can we say that this is bad for us? Everyone accepts that fruits and vegetables are good for us. And this is, way less harmful than those fruits and vegetables. So obviously it's safe, right? So that's an assumption. You're assuming a fact that's not in evidence, as they would say in law. That's assuming that fruits and vegetables actually are good for you. But I look at that and go, holy crap, there's a lot of toxins in there. And they're worse than pesticides, which are known to kill things and cause cancer. So I think that's not good. And the professor didn't think that was good. And we were very blown away by this. We were literally looking around shocked. Like I was looking, or everyone was looking around, like looking for someone to be in on the joke and just like, am I getting punked here? Looking around for like a TA who was like laughing in the corner, but there's no one. Everyone was just as confused as I was. And I remember we all sort of settled down, sort of realized he wasn't joking. And I remember thinking in my head, like, well, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And it felt like he just read my mind, because he looked at us and said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. I was like, right, screw plants. So I stopped that day. I went to the grocery store straight after class, and I was just in a daze. I was like, well, what do I eat? It's just, everything's plants. The entire grocery store was plants or plant products or something made with plants. I was like, what do I eat? And I just sort of came around some eggs. I was like, okay, eggs don't come from plants. Get some eggs. And meat section, my favorite anyway. I was always a big meat eater. That's the only thing I wanted to eat anyway. And so I was like, okay, meat doesn't come from plants. I'm like, okay, great. So I just ate eggs and meat, and milk every now and then, because I didn't know to avoid carbs and lactose and all that sort of stuff. And it was skim milk, because at the time,
Right.
everyone knew that fat was bad for you. And so, I was just eating eggs and meat and some milk every now and then. And that was it. So I just naturally went into a carnivore diet, an ancestral diet, a Paleolithic diet, caveman diet, an ice age diet. The diet that our ancestors have been eating predominantly for millions of years. And so the immutable law of biology is that of adaptation. What you've been exposed to is what you're going to be adapting to. And what you've been exposed to for a longer period of time is what you will have a chance to adapt fully to it. Also, there's nothing inherently harmful in meat, right? So an animal is hard to kill. You get a buffalo or a giraffe or an elephant or a bison. These are big, strong animals. You're not taking them down with your hands. very difficult to do this. And so hunting was life-threatening. And, especially with spears and sticks and all these sorts of things. So this was difficult. This was a difficult thing to do, but people were doing it. And it's difficult to get the meat. It's difficult to kill the animal, especially when you have primitive tools. But when you get it, it is the most bioavailable, nutritious food available. You don't have to do anything special to digest it. Any animal can do this, really, that I know of. And that is not the case with plants. Plants are difficult to digest. They're difficult to absorb. They're a different form of life.
I was actually thinking of this today as a logical argument in regards, and if you like plants, that's fine. It's like, it's not that I don't like vegetables. It's anything like, different people, different things for different, they're good. But different things for different people, that's fine. But I don't know, because I was thinking this, because I can't think of any. I can think of insects, but are there any, unlike plants, where you have to be very careful of what you eat? You can't just eat any plant. There are certain ones some will outright kill you no matter what you do, and there's other ones that are less bad. Is there any animal that if you kill it and eat it, it will kill you?
Yeah, well, there are animals that have poison sacs. There are animals that eat slightly poisonous things that will, have like, different toads and things like that will eat certain poisonous things that don't kill them, but then they have it on their skin and things like that. So there are animals that use, toxic defenses as well. So this isn't only found in the animal kingdom, but these are generally smaller animals that don't have big, strong defenses, kinetic defenses. There's no such thing as a poisonous cow that I know of.
Yeah.
Or poisonous dolphin or whale. I mean, these are big animals that don't need that sort of defense. So you're looking at, like the monarch butterfly it's very colorful, and that's warning birds and other animals, don't eat me because I'm poisonous. And so those brightly colored things, they can use poison, but
the vast majority of animals.
But that's the thing, though, is that parts of that animal are probably fine, like the muscle meat, probably fine. They have an exterior coating, some poison on the skin that's a barrier protection. But does that mean that the meat is poisonous? Probably not.
No.
Even like the fugu fish, the puffer fish, that has parts of it that will kill you if you eat it. So you have to have someone who really knows what they're doing and can cut that bit out safely and not contaminate the rest of it. And then you can eat that. And then, from what I've heard, it doesn't even taste all that good, but it's all costs insane amounts of money for sashimi of this fish. And it's just like, why would you? It's not like the most wonderful, amazing thing ever. It's just that it didn't kill you. That's what you're paying for.
And you're trusting that the guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah, and you're playing with your life, and you've already. If I was the restaurant, I'd get them to pay in advance.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, it's like, the people that say, oh, well, meat's bad for you. It's like, well, name if I go out and I kill a chipmunk because it's the only thing, I can just eat the chipmunk. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think, oh, well, most of the animals around here, it doesn't matter what it is. And it's not that I don't love animals. I do love animals. But the fact of the matter is.
Oh, yeah, me too. They're delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I have noticed, which surprised me, because when I started working with Dr. Zaldivar, I was like, I don't know if I really want to go full carnivore, because I was going to do, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I was going to go do the Russian kettlebell certification. And one of the things you have to do is it's a snatch test. And I was concerned about whether I was going to have the energy to actually do the snatch test. And so I didn't want to be, there's something to be said, I think, for the carb adaptation, the fat adaptation time. But now that I'm more fat adapted and carnivore, I find I just like go forever. Like,
yeah, that's because you're running on your fat.
Yeah, it's
like a lot more fat stores than you have glycogen stores.
It's amazing.
Even if you're very slender, you'll have far more stores available.
people look at me and it's like, and I still have, I'm probably about 20% body fat or more, but it's like, you try to explain to people, it's like, you do realize that I have 70,000 calories sitting on me.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think I can go for an hour without eating.
yeah, 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 or a day or longer.
Or
Even
35.
yeah. Well, look, a slender person is going to have weeks of energy available to them.
Yeah.
So the idea that you have to carbo load and do all this sort of stuff so you get energy doesn't make sense. The other argument is that, well, does your body produce enough energy and glycogen to catch up and to meet the demand? And I was just talking to a friend of mine, Dr. Paul Mason. He was telling me about a study that showed that, yeah, in fact, people that are keto adapted, fat adapted, so doing a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet, that they did this in athletes, and they found that you do some big workout and they're getting glycogen depleted, and that the people that were keto adapted, they had people eat a whole bunch of sugar, right? So like a sugary drink, and they had people just stand there. And the ones that were keto adapted, fat adapted, who did not have anything, they replenished their glycogen much faster than the ones sucking down sugar drinks, right? So yes, this is better. This is better for the athlete. And I noticed that firsthand. And I don't need any study to tell me what my body was telling me. I played high level rugby, professional level rugby on all the top leagues in North America and America and Canada. And I played at a professional level in England and played at a very high level in Ireland as well when I was in medical school there. I played in the AIL1, and that's just below, the sort of the premiership there. And that was just, because I had way too much things to do. So it wasn't any point in trying to go for a higher level than that. But I have never in my life performed at a better level, to better extent, and had more energy and more athletic output than when on a carnivore diet in my early 20s. And instantly, when I was playing in England at 25, that's when I sort of slipped off of it. And I just started adding in some like breaded chicken because that I had access to, was easy, and I had a lot of it accessible to me, that it really started hurting my athletic performance and my energy levels. So no, there's just no difference. And so I know, I mean, I felt like a superhero. I felt like just a different breed of human, and I could just go. I could just run and sprint and just go. I just never got tired. I never ran out of energy. I was in such good shape. I literally could have sprinted a marathon. And I regret to this day, I remember thinking at the time, like, I need to go enter a marathon and just sprint the whole damn thing, because I can sprint the whole thing. But there was nothing sounded more boring, than just running for 26 miles. It was just like, God, if I run 20 meters and I don't get to hit somebody, like, I'm upset. So, imagine 26 miles of that. I just want to be like just checking, people in the crowd and things like that. So, but
you could
I will never be in that shape again.
But you can create a new sport, full contact marathons.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem with that one is that you'd have to do it in a ring though, so you could lap people and just knock over last guy, right? So it's sort of like a roller derby sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because and I'm way out in front, then I don't get to hit anybody, and so that's no fun. Whereas if I'm heading, I'm coming up on someone, I'm going to pick it up so I can just body check those guys all. So you have to do it like in a ring, like a 1 mile big loop.
Right. 26 laps.
Smash them. Yeah, that's it.
New sport, man. We'll make millions. We'll make.
Yeah, and you just hit the same dude 26 times. Just
because it's the poor guy in the back. The poor guy.
Yeah, exactly. Just get nailed. Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Oh yes, it would. Oh my God, that's funny. And another thing with carnivore, what you would say, you don't need to supplement on carnivore. I mean, you can, but you don't really need to.
You shouldn't need to. We're not eating wild mammoth or wild horses or wild deer or wild oxen. Mm-hmm. So the meat that we're eating is being fed things that they didn't eat naturally in the wild either. And so, the nutritional content is going to be a bit lower. When you look at wild game or you look at regeneratively raised livestock, it is a significant higher proportion of these micronutrients. So most people will do just fine and don't need anything else. You don't need to supplement even if it's not enough for you. Really what you need is you need to go to a more nutrient dense portion of the animal, which would be the organs. And you don't even need much of that. You know, a bit of liver, a bit of other things, you know, you'll be fine. You'll cover yourself. So if you're including a bit of organs, you'll cover your bases. You can always check. You can always check your vitamins and minerals and make sure you're in an optimal level. And if you're not, add in a bit of liver, add in a bit of heart or kidneys or whatever. And whatever organs have, you know, an abundant supply of that nutrient that you need a bit more help in. Most people are nutritionally deficient. Most people would benefit from supplements. Most people would benefit from some liver and some steaks. But, you know, a lot of people are just mildly deficient. So they're not like crazy deficient, like, my God, this person's going to die deficient. And so they may not even realize it. And they may feel a bit crummy. Then you check their blood work and it looks like, well, you know, sort of in that range, was in the normal reference range. The problem with the reference range is it's an average range of the population that you live in. So this is why different labs in the same town will have different reference ranges, because they're not looking at, this isn't the reference range. This is what is healthy. This is where you need to be in to be healthy. This is the reference range of just the people in your community. Now, before, 93% of people in America were metabolically sick and 70% of Americans were overweight or obese. And 100 years ago, when it was around 1.5% of people were obese and really no metabolic illness, no heart disease. Well, 1920s, it started to pick up. But, you know, the first heart attack that was described on autopsy in America was around 1910, right? Alzheimer's disease came up around that time too. Coincidentally, when we started eating a hell of a lot more sugar and seed oils and processed foods, right? Coincidental or not, I don't know. But didn't exist before that. We have no descriptions in the literature or on autopsy or anywhere else of these things, or even a similar disease by another name. These were different, these were new. Mm-hmm. And so 100 years ago or 110 years ago, we were not metabolically sick. We were not overweight. We did not have these problems. And so looking at the average person, probably be okay. Now the average person is sick, they're malnourished, they're underdeveloped, they've got hormone disruptions, dysfunctions. Also, you're looking at someone who's 20 years old and you have people in there that are 80, 90, 50, 70, 6, 2. You know, you don't know what you're getting. Fat, sick, old, young, all these sorts of things. So you don't know. And who gets lab tests? People who are sick generally. Right. Not all that many baby checks, right? So it's not people going in just because, I just want to see what's going on, right? I feel great though, but I want to see what's going on. I want to prove to the world that my bloods look great. Now, most people are getting bloods done because they're unwell and there's a problem. And so they went to their doctor and their doctor said, we need to go check something. So for that reason, the reference range is that, because it's an average, is getting lower and lower and lower. So they're saying, oh yeah, you're in that reference range. Yeah, but you're in a sinking ship. Yeah, but you're still on board. So it's okay. You're on the ship. You're on the ship. Ships float. So therefore you're good. Ship is sinking. Ship is already 10 fathoms below the surface. So no, you know, that's not good enough. So you want to look at other sorts of things. You want to look at reference ranges of actual health. People go and they check their nutrients and they say, yeah, they're all fine. Their doctors would know that. And they say, yeah, it's all fine. It's probably not. Most people are nutrient deficient. And that's why the reference ranges are coming down, because that's the average person is nutrient deficient. And so you may not even realize it. So you need to go to someone who understands this and to see what you are. And it may be that you start eating a carnivore diet, you add in some liver, and you're like, oh my God, my levels are high. Like, oh, that's too high. No, you're getting in a good range now. Yeah.
Some people will say, well, the carnivore diet is too restrictive. Now, Dr. Berry does beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. You are basically steak, salt, and water. And
I don't use salt anymore.
And people would say that's restrictive. If it's a plant, i.e. coffee, if it's a plant, you don't have it, which is fine. Now, people would say, I'll give you this. It's like people say, well, that's too restrictive. Yes. Okay. Well, you know what? If you go into a cage, that's restrictive. right?
Mhm.
But if you're put in the water with a bunch of great white sharks and you're in a cage, is that restrictive?
Exactly where you want to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
yeah.
The other thing is, what are we meaning by restricted? First of all, well, you're not eating any plants. That's restrictive. Oh, okay, when you go to the bar, do you do coke and heroin and meth? No, no, I don't. That's very restrictive. You are really restricting the different drugs that you use. And it's like, yeah, okay, but I don't want to use drugs. Oh my God, that's even more restrictive. I can't believe you. Yeah, look, they're bad for you, and you may not want to put them in your body. You may like the effects that they bring. I don't care. I don't care what effects they bring. I don't want that stuff in my body because I don't want my body to be harmed by them. And that's the same thing with plants to greater or lesser extent. I mean, first of all, most plants will kill you, right? So to say that, oh my God, you can't say that plants are worse than drugs. First of all, most drugs come from plants. Remember that. Second of all, most plants will just kill you,
Yeah.
right? The vast
Most people
majority
most people don't
will kill
realize
you.
is that kidney beans, kidney beans,
Mhm.
if you don't cook them right, just
Mhm.
five will
Mhm.
kill you.
Or at least hurt you significantly. And then people, yeah, adults have been put in the hospital with as little as 5 kidney beans.
If you what okay, what I mean is if you eat five raw kidney beans, so not I mean I'm
Mhm.
not talking you've done anything to them. Five raw kidney beans, from what I understand, will kill you. It will coagulate your blood and you'll die.
Um, I guess it depends on the person, how big they
Yeah.
are, things like that. But the WHO talks about this, and they use specifically 5 kidney beans. There's reports in the literature showing that people have been hospitalized for as little as 5 kidney
Oh,
beans.
okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And so, whether they died or not, I don't know.
Hmm.
But that's the reference that I know of from the WHO. Was 5 kidney beans is enough to put someone in the hospital, put an adult in the hospital. And so, restrictive. Well, is it restrictive? I mean, I eat absolutely as much as I want. I don't starve myself. I don't fast. I don't restrict. I don't count calories. I don't count macros. I just eat all the different kinds of meat that I want as much as I want until I just don't want anymore. I can eat any time of the day or night. I'm not limited. I don't have to eat in a eating window or anything like that. And so to me, it's very freeing. I have all this leeway. I get to eat exactly what I want, as much of it as I want. It tastes good to me, and I eat as much of it as tastes good to me, and I stop when it doesn't. So I choose all that. That's actually very freeing. It opens up about 6 hours of my day where I'm not thinking about preparing or eating food. So that's actually very freeing. I get an extra 6 hours of my day. Also, not being overweight, not having back pain, not having inflammation, not having joint pain, not having brain fog, not having other sorts of issues and problems. That's
Yeah.
freeing. Those problems are restrictive. Now I haven't had very many health issues. I haven't had like any major health issues in my life, thankfully, but other people have. And so, people with multiple sclerosis that are in wheelchairs, crippled. There's a lady on my podcast named Dr. Sarah, who was in her early 30s, crippled with multiple sclerosis. And she went on a carnivore diet. First of all, she's a PhD in biostatistics. She does high level medical research. And so she came across a carnivore diet, saw people getting better on it. She said, okay, let me look in this, started looking into literature and went, holy crap, there's really something to this. And so she went and did it herself. And what do you know? In 6 months, not only was she not in a wheelchair dying, she was out of her wheelchair and back doing ballet. She had recovered so much.
Oh,
That does
wow.
not happen.
No.
And, she MRIs showing that her lesions were repairing and resolving. That doesn't happen.
No.
It goes one way into the grave.
Hmm.
you know and so that's restrictive. Being in a wheelchair is restrictive.
Yep.
Having to take medications multiple times a day is restrictive. Being beholden to your doctor and a medical system and all these sorts of things, that's restrictive. you know Crohn's, having bloody diarrhea 20, 30 times a day, never being able to be more than 30 seconds away from a toilet is
Hmm.
restrictive.
Yep.
This is the most freeing experience I've ever had in my life. I have my whole day to myself. I worked all day. I got up, I worked, I did a YouTube live. I saw patients all day, came back, was able to, spend time with friends, had dinner, and now I'm doing this, and it's 11:30 at night. I've eaten one time. It took me 6 minutes to cook a steak and a couple eggs.
Mhm.
I enjoyed my dinner, and then I had 23 more hours of my day to myself to sleep, work, and enjoy myself. So that's very freeing. That is the least restrictive thing ever. And I don't think it's
There's something to be said for it's very uncomplicated. How many people say, well, what are we gonna go, what are we gonna get to eat? Steak? Okay. It's very uncomplicated.
Yes.
There's something to having your life being very uncomplicated. And
It's nice.
yeah, it's like not having sugar cravings. Like you get to the end of the week, and I know this is, you've been this way for such a long time. It's not something you fight with, but you get to the end of the week, and I would normally go, on the weekend, I'd normally be pretty good, and then you go cheat and get an ice cream. And it's like, and I think about, I could go get an ice cream. Nah. And to be in the situation where your brain's just like, nah, in something that, I like ice cream. I'm not going to say I don't like ice cream. Or you're in the situation where there's something in the back of my head saying, man, I would like some Cool Ranch Doritos. Well, they happen to make Cool Ranch Doritos, so you can't stop eating them. And be like, nah, I'm good. Like whatever. It's too much work to go get the Doritos, so I'm not gonna. It's very liberating, and people don't go, oh man, it's too restrictive. Until you're free of it, you don't realize that it's actually very liberating.
It is, yeah. And I mean, I don't think it's restrictive to limit what you eat to what is actually food. I don't consider that stuff food because, in a strict biological sense, it's not food. Food is species specific.
I wish I was there yet. I'm not. It's like I'm fighting.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, but it's a struggle. The one thing you do talk about, and that I'm finding difficult, and I think you might be able to address this too, is the eat until it stops tasting good. And I try, except it always tastes good. Like I could just eat meat and eat steak and just like there's a bottomless pit. I think now, would you say that's learning new hunger signals is what the issue is?
So you have to learn new hunger signals,
Yeah.
but you should also listen to your body. Also, you do that so the caveat is if you are only eating meat and water, because things that you eat that can disrupt your hunger signals and cause you to want to eat more.
Okay.
So you can't that way. And so, if you're disrupting your insulin and blocking leptin and disrupting your satiety signals, then yeah, you're not going to get the same signals. If you are only eating meat and only drinking water, then you can listen to your body.
Okay.
You can listen to taste, and a big factor there is taste. And so if meat still tastes good, that means you're hungry. You should keep eating. If a steak doesn't taste good, then you're not hungry. But people say like, oh, don't you get tired of it? No, I don't. Because if a steak doesn't taste good, you're not hungry, just don't eat.
Right.
And so, it'll taste good later. And so some people I don't really want to, it just sort of makes me feel quick. Don't eat then. You're not hungry. It's fine,
And what I find amazing is the ability to, and I know you've talked about this too, the ability to work out fasted. I feel better. You go for an hour, hour and a half. So I go to work. So I go to work in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't eat. I go to work. I work, 6, 7 hours. I haven't eaten. And then I go work out for an hour and a half and like pummel myself for an hour and a half. I don't eat. And when I do that, I feel better than if I have, and okay, I can have coffee. I can have coffee with some cream in it. That's fine. I do that. A cream or MCT powder. I'll do that. And I feel great. And the moment I eat anything, I'm like, I don't want to do anything. It's crazy. It's like totally against everything that is taught in the mainstream media. That's the amazing thing about this. So
you're dedicating blood and resources to your intestine in order to break this stuff down, right? So that's blood that's not available to your brain and body. You switch on your parasympathetics, you go into this sort of calming rest and digest mode because, hey, You need energy to go get your kill, to go hunt, get out there and do it, right? But then you start eating and you're signaling your body, hey, we got our kill. And so now okay, slow it down. Now we need to prepare, we need to relax, we need to rebuild. And so, it's a natural thing to be lethargic and tired after that. And that's what you see in the wild. You see predators like lions, they'll take down a big antelope or a gazelle or a buffalo or whatever, and they'll eat it and then they'll pass out for 12 hours, 14 hours, right? So, that's a natural response. And so I noticed that in my athletic career, that I just always felt better if I was on an empty stomach, and I always tried to train on an empty stomach. I didn't even like eating lunch at school because I didn't think that was too soon. Before
Alternatively, I remember I went to I'm sorry, but I went to a gathering with a bunch of friends, and all my friends are Spanish, so you got a lot of, that's fruits and vegetables and fruit juice and hamburgers and hot dogs and buns and all this other stuff, and they had the hot dogs and hamburgers in the buns, and they had chips and they had all these things, and I was just eating hamburgers and hot dogs, no buns. I'll tell you, what really kills me is why are you putting corn syrup in a freaking hot dog? Come on. I know, because it makes it taste better. And they're all like zoned out in chairs. This totally blew my mind. So I have like a pound of meat. So I eat about a pound or more of meat. I don't even know how much I ate. And I was in the process of trying to do a 10,000 kettlebell swings in a month. Okay.
Mhm.
So, which is 500 a day. And I had to get my 500 swings in, and I hadn't done it before the party or before the gathering. So I had brought a kettlebell, and after eating a pound and a half of meat, I'm banging out 500 kettlebell swings over in the corner while they're all like zombies in their chairs. And I'm like, isn't this a kick in the head? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm over here perfectly able to like function, and you guys like can barely get out of your chairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a difference hamburger buns makes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can get reactive hypoglycemia. You'll get a spike in your blood sugar, spike in your insulin, and that causes a reactive lessening of your blood sugar. Now you have low blood sugar.
Yeah.
That makes you very tired, and you've also suppressed body's ability to make ketones, which is your brain's primary energy source. So you don't have enough ketones, you don't have enough blood sugar, and the brain doesn't work. And so, yeah, it's very normal to get very tired after that.
Okay. So we were supposed to end earlier, and I appreciate your time. We both can talk, and I really, really appreciate this, but I do want to kind of wind this up so that you can actually go to sleep.
Yeah.
So that you can operate on somebody tomorrow and not screw up. So
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. So thank you very much. I'll be turning off this recording in a minute, but everybody, I hope you all appreciate this interview. Thank you so much, Dr. Chaffee, for coming on and talking to all 49 people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're very welcome. I hope people enjoyed it, and it was a pleasure meeting.
And this is Jimmy the Hammer saying always be the hammer, and Jimmy the Hammer out.